Cleveland pitching legend Bob Lemon, Hall of Famer, once said, "The two most important things in life are good friends and a strong bullpen." Cleveland had plenty of those last year, but could they trade one of those good relievers that were among many friends? We're reviewing the bullpen from 2024 and looking ahead to 2025 on today's Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bagger of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I love Bob Lemon in those grumpier old men movies. That's the guy, right? Like, he was great with
yeah, definitely the same guy.
That's him, right? Like, that was something Lemon. That's who that was, right? With I almost said Walter Mondale. That's not
We're off to a good start.
Oh man, it's a Friday edition of Locked On Guardians. And this episode is brought to you by the fantastic folks at FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 and bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today.
We're talking all things bullpen today. We're talking about how great the Guardians bullpen was in 2024. It was the backbone of the team. So we'll talk about a couple of those things. We'll talk about Brad Goldberg a little bit and how his season went as far as becoming this team's bullpen coach and what his future looks like. We will talk about Emmanuel Clase's postseason a little. We're also going to talk about some trade ideas from the bullpen as well. And we'll talk about some prospects that could emerge. All things bullpen. It's going to be a fun episode. We already did like 2 episodes off the air just discussing random things. We could have recorded that and that could have been it.
We've been talking for
an hour and a half.
An hour and 40 minutes about ideas and trades and going through stuff.
Didn't record a single minute of it.
Didn't record a single minute. Yeah.
So you're all getting the B version now. It'll be good. I think it'll be good.
Walter Matthau was of course, and Jack Lemon, just so people don't get mad.
Jack Lemon. There you go.
Yes. I always think underrated. Another day.
Do the intros and let's go.
Let's do the intros. I'm Jeff Ellis. Used to write at Scott 24/7, national on the draft and prospects. You can check me out over on Blue Sky. I just dropped my September mock over there. Jeff MLB Draft at Blue Sky. I still push everything on Twitter, but I'm going to do more conversations on Blue Sky because Twitter's just getting a little too toxic. But I've been here since this started. So thank you for joining me and Justin today.
Yes, I'm Justin Latta, and I've been here also for a little over 2 years now. I used to cover Guardians prospects at places like Guardians Baseball Insider, a bunch of other places as well, going back to 2007. And currently at Next Year in Cleveland on Substack, if you want that. And then Prospects Live and News Herald Morning Journal. I'll have some stuff coming up there soon. And also over on Blue Sky, JL Baseball, _. There, maybe we should get those into our graphics at some point. So We'll see there. All right, bullpen. I think I said this all year. The worst loss in baseball. People can debate this. I think some people hate losing by not scoring any runs. I think the worst loss in baseball is the bullpen blown game, when you're winning a game and your bullpen comes in and it just falls apart. I think that's the worst, most devastating way to lose, which again was, I think, why this year was so fun, because this bullpen was so great. And they were like something like 78-2 when they were leading, or 72-2, something in 2 when leading after the 6th inning or 7th inning. Like, it was almost a guarantee if they had a lead after the 6th or 7th inning that was over, which is incredible for a team, by the way, that came into April without Trevor Stephan, without Sam Henches, who did pitch some innings but missed not majority of the year. No James Karinchak, who at one point was a key member of the bullpen. Emmanuel Clase was coming off a good but strange year. Cade Smith had no idea if he was making the team on opening day in Oakland.
Well, he was told he was making it as long as they didn't get anyone better.
Yeah, which
would have been nobody. The highest WAR in baseball amongst relievers.
Well, we might claim somebody off waivers that might squeeze you off the roster. Well, Cade Smith ain't going anywhere. I think if there's someone over the offseason you can hang your hat on extensions for, it's Cade Smith at this point. But that's another story for another day. But I'm stunned. I mean, Hunter Gaddis, nobody knew he was going to turn into that. You and I have always been kind of Hunter Gaddis guys as far as some of the stuff. I think we both were a little leery if it would work as a starter. But
We always
Hunter
thought
Gaddis, Cade Smith, and Tim Herron, you got to give a shout out to Tim Herron,
Yeah.
friend of the show. All these guys were not locks in terms of lockdown bullpen guys. These all are guys that were interesting arms that you thought had a chance to be good, and they all turned in just career incredible seasons. It was so hard to see that coming, but incredible development by the Guardians for that, and also huge credit to Brad Goldberg.
I think forget about Brad Goldberg. I'm kidding. But I think the common theme here is Gaddis, Herron, Bybee. They came on the show.
That's right.
Come on, Cleveland, set us up with McKenzie. Allen will straighten them all out. Apparently,
yes, the Lockdown Guardians reverse.
We have a curse. We have an anti-curse.
It's a charm. It's a charm.
It's a charm. We are charm. I mean, right now our least successful guest is Cooper Ingle, who is
won the MVP in the Midwest League this year.
So Guardians. Why are you not putting more people on the show?
I do have a request out to the Guardians for Brad Goldberg to join the show. So let the Guardians know you want to hear from Brad Goldberg.
I think Brad Goldberg has family members who listen to the show, from what I understand. So,
might.
Maybe you can. Brad Goldberg, I think I mentioned this before. It's just a fun fact. He was my first ever interview back when he was a senior at Ohio State. That was my first on the phone interview. But yeah, so he's been spectacular as a bullpen coach, because honestly, I thought the bullpen was going to be one of the biggest issues. 2 years ago, they led the league in blown saves. And, I keep bringing it up because everyone's like, oh, all of these things went right. Nothing went more right than the bullpen. They went from the most blown saves to the least amount of blown saves. And if they had the same number of blown saves, and that's not typically something where you see big spikes. Like, bullpens can be volatile, but not to that extreme. If they had the same number of blown saves in 2023 as they did in 2024, they win the division. Like, that's just how it works. Like, that was the difference in the division. So it's not, and it wasn't just that they were surprises. It's that they were the elite of the elite on top of being surprises. It was like there was some surprise that they were, sticking around. Like, you and I both kind of thought Herron might be up and down this year. We both, a lot of other guys like Sabrowski. Like, we thought, maybe in a best situation, Herron would be closer to that, but he wasn't. He was like a top 5 left-handed reliever in baseball. Gaddis was phenomenal. Cade Smith was unhittable. So yeah, it's just, it wasn't just how good. It wasn't just being good. It was how good. And poor Rico Beltran, like, very well liked in the system, but boy, did it seem like things changed when they elevated Brad Goldberg to that position.
Yeah. And again, because he made the whole unit gel, right? Like, this again, Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis. Gaddis came to spring training as a starter. He didn't know he was going to be the bullpen until there were some other injuries that popped up. So the way it shook out. And Eli Morgan battled injuries a lot of the year, still had a fabulous year. Nick Sandlin had a good first half and just fell apart. But by the end of the year, Eric Sabrowski emerges a little bit. He's interesting. We're not really big on him. I love the story now, though. I do. Andrew Walters made it. It was later than we expected, and the most unexpected way, but he made it. And then, hey, shout out to Pedro Avila. Like, Pedro Avila, 82 innings this year. Pedro Avila. Yeah, I'm so respectful of the guy. I can't get his last name right. I mean, I
gotta. Okay, everyone can mark it down and make fun of me for being the pronunciation. I just, for me, that was one of those things. I loved hearing it all postseason. So I'm not trying to be a jerk face.
Yeah, and Pedro Avila soaked up a lot of innings for you this year. He saved other bullpen arms when things were going pretty, and he pitched really well. And he was a guy once a week I kept thinking, well, this is the week they DFA him. And then I'm like, well, I don't want him on the postseason roster. And he actually was one of the relievers that helped him in the New York series. So
he should have gotten more. I'll say that again. He should have gotten more. He was dynamite in that extra inning game, and then we never saw him again.
Yeah. I mean, to go back and just kind of look at some of the names on this who pitched this year in the bullpen for them, like, you had at one point you did have Anthony Gose. Tyler Beatty threw 13 games for them this year.
We thought he was going to be a big part too. That's one
we did. Wes Parsons was part of the bullpen for a couple of days. Spencer Howard threw 2 innings out of the bullpen.
That might have been if we're doing the worst bullpen member this year, it might be Spencer Howard.
Poor Spencer Howard, yeah. I mean, Darren McCagan was a thing for a couple of days.
Gagging on McCagan.
Connor Gillespie actually was gave him some important
Okay.
innings at one point this year.
It was okay.
My old buddy Xavier Curry. Oh, that didn't go the way I really hoped it for him. I wish the best for Curry though.
Yes,
Fantastic
agreed.
guy. Yeah, just what a weird year. Like it just again did not expect Hunter Gaddis to take that level of a leap this year as a reliever. Tim Herron, credit they changed his pitch mix a little bit. That helped out a ton. Cade Smith, you and I saw. I mean, we looked at Cade Smith in the minors. Cade Smith right now is the jewel of their 2020 group because the 2020 draft class looks horrendous, and he wasn't even drafted, and he was going to be the best player they added in the 2020 class at that point. And then remember Scott Barlow? Scott Barlow was a thing for most of this year.
Yeah.
And credit to them. They finally decided we'll eat the money and get him out of here because it just wasn't working. So I think the real question, too, is how much longer we're going to move on. We haven't talked about Emmanuel Clase yet, and that's by design. The only question I really have is how much longer can you hang on to Brad Goldberg before a team comes calling? I don't think it's going to be this offseason.
No. Yeah,
because there just weren't a lot of coaches that really changed teams, which is surprising. But if this bullpen comes out and has another great year next year, which it really could, which we're going to talk about in the third segment, he could easily be on the radar very soon. So
I almost wonder if they just talk.
He's got to be like the assistant pitching coach.
Yeah, it's like
Carl to be the pitching coach and waiting
because Carl's going to retire probably within the next 2 to 3 years, right? Like he is,
1 to 2 maybe even.
Yeah, like he's so that may and the one thing I'll say is Goldberg is a Northeast Ohio kid. There might be value. They might have the ability to keep him just because of if they're yes, you're the next pitching coach. Like that might be enough to keep him in the area.
Yeah,
that
could be. You're right.
That is the one area one time where I'm like, that might have some advantageousness to it.
Good. All right. We will talk about Emmanuel Clase in the second segment. We haven't yet because he had a fantastic year and the postseason was weird. We'll talk about how much that really matters and how to balance those things. We're also going to talk about trades. Could the Guardians trade from their bullpen this offseason? We'll get into all that in the rest of today's show. It is the holiday season, and you want to get some money back. You got Thanksgiving dinner you got to buy for. Always crazy. I mean, the turkeys, you go get turkeys, and they're always cheap if you go out and spend like $50 somewhere. But if you want to have big holidays with big get-togethers without having to, rack your bank account, all the things you're putting in your shopping cart, grocery bills add up this time of year. So this month, Ibotta is giving new users 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem everything you need to make your Thanksgiving feast complete. All you got to do is shop at your favorite retailers and upload your receipt. They might even let Jeff buy his eggnog with some of this. You never know. Maybe coming up soon. Download the Ibotta app now. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast starting November 1st. So it's already started. Go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. We already know how things are going over at FanDuel as well. It is the NFL season. Tackle it with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's FanDuel Sportsbook app is giving you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. If you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. No Browns on Sunday. Maybe you want to throw in some action on something on a game you're watching that isn't the Browns. Do so responsibly, but if you're a new customer and you haven't done it yet, $5 on that hunch in the middle of a game on the next touchdown, reception, all those kind of things. Over-unders are all over at FanDuel. Even the Cavs, man, the Cavs are undefeated. They're going to go 82-0. Go bet on that. I don't know. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started $150 in bonus bets to win your first $5 bet. It's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I did not see that postseason coming from Emmanuel Clase, which really stinks because he's going to get down ballot Cy Young votes, right? Like he's going to wind up in the top 5 probably of Cy Young. And I feel like unfairly, I feel like a lot of people
Yeah,
are
he'll
just
get
going to run
dinged.
to the postseason. I think that stinks, but it's just so confounding. Like, how much of that is Emmanuel Clase? How much of that is overusage or doing things that were out of the ordinary?
I think that's the key.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, we saw a year ago with him when he had struggles and this and that, how much he needs to. He's a creature of habit, right? Like he struggled in 2023, and he
All
struggled
baseball
out of
players
the
are creatures of habit. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, but he struggled out of the gate so much, right? With the pitch clock. Remember how much the struggle was early and trying to adjust and change how he does things at the pitch clock. It took him basically almost the entire year, even though he was in the minors with it. Like he had changed his routine when he got to the big leagues, and it took him almost a full year to get back to where he was and develop a new routine. Like I think he more than most is that. And then you're asking him to go in early or asking him to go in with runners on. And I know everyone will say like multiple outs or something. He's even had points in the past where you sent him in and tie games, and maybe I have to look at the numbers, and maybe this is just all like, prisoner of the moment things in my head, but it feels like he's a guy who just does better in that specific time, that he's not the guy you want to send out when it's a tie game. He's not the guy, like he feels like very much the person where you don't want to change routines on him. And listen, I love what Vogt did this year, but I think he got a little too clever in the postseason at points and maybe tried to change up a little too much when it came to the pitching. And I think that hurt Clase maybe more than others. And I mean, I think with all those arms too, in fairness, I'm not just blaming Vogt. I think everyone was exhausted after high use all year long.
Yeah, I think the reliever thing, the thing that people don't see is the times you warm up. And
Yes.
teams track that. They're smart about that. Warming up, even not going in. And if you warm up twice, that's especially something teams track. I don't know how much he really did that. The one thing you could say about Clase, like in terms of, yeah, he threw in 74 games plus I don't even know how many postseason innings. He was mostly efficient with his pitch count. So like the everyday, the constant usage is one thing, but it's not like he's going out there and throwing 20, 25 pitches an outing, like, and whatever, like I'd have to go back and look, but like so many of his outings are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like every time we watch the game together, my wife and her family, we always do the guessing game in the 9th inning of how many pitches is Clase going to throw when he comes in for a save. And mostly everybody guessed something from like, 9 to 16. And often it somewhere falls in that middle. So he's usually pretty efficient. So you can always add a friend of the show who always gives us good advice, always says you can add pitches for a guy, but it's the up downs. It's the, you get 2 or 3 outs in the 9th inning or whatever, or the 8th inning. You have to go sit down. You got to come back up in the 9th or 10th inning, and you got to ramp it back up. I think that's the biggest thing. If you want to do that more with Clase, if you're looking big picture for playoffs, you've got to be careful because you got to get through 162 games. But you got to maybe pick some spots where, okay, like, because Clase always tells Vogt always says, can I go off the next inning? I want to go off the next inning. That New York game was the only game that he threw multiple innings in this year, was that crazy extra inning game in New York. And he pitched 2 innings and he was like, I want to go out for a third. And Vogt's like, absolutely not. That was the only time they did in the regular season. So it's not as if he's never done it before, but I think when you do it multiple times in a short time span, plus you're giving, I think that's the thing. I think hitters seeing relievers, I think some people have like done studies on this and they're like, it's not really a thing, but it could be a thing. We don't have enough data. But hitters seeing him multiple times in a series. Here's my question. I mean, this is unfair that we're spending this whole discussion on Emmanuel Clase's postseason and not looking at how ridiculously good his regular season was, because he deserves credit for that. Do we think Emmanuel Clase needs a third pitch?
No, I think he's fine. I think we're probably overanalyzing him. It's
not the first time we've heard that.
because it was a long season for him, and he was asked to do things he hadn't been asked to do all year. If he really needed a third pitch, he wouldn't still be effective. Like all these teams have seen him. There's nothing left to be seen. Like he's led the league in innings. What, like 2 of the last 3, or not innings, appearances 2 of the last 3 years. No, all 3 years. Most I'm sorry, most games finished the last 3 years. 70. So since he got to Cleveland, 71, 77, 75, 74. And in his worst year, he had an ERA, which is not ideal, but in that many of 3.22. Every other year, his second worst was a 1.36. Like, I don't think he needs a third pitch. I think he's fine. I think it was a mix of, we can debate how some of those games were called pitch-wise, that maybe they were not called the best for him, that there might have been some of the catching. People say we're making excuses, but just look at the numbers. I mean, he's been unbelievable. I think he's fine with what he is. Like, if it wasn't going to be effective, he wouldn't have been that good throughout the year.
That's true. That's a good point. You're absolutely right. Because you don't get to a 0.61 ERA and a 2.22 FIP and lead the league in saves. Or I think he came in second in saves.
He has pitched 312 innings in the big leagues and has a 1.67 ERA.
Yeah, that's so you're right. He's essentially had 2 pitches that entire time. You're not accidentally good, but teams do adjust. To be fair, teams do adjust. So do you think that the Kerry? So there's the Kerry Carpenter home run, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton home runs. Game 5. Game 5, he didn't get hit hard. It was a lot of those singles and stuff that happens to him sometimes. So it's 3 bad at bats in the postseason, I suppose, is where it gets overblown. Do you think those 3 at bats were fatigue, overuse, leading to bad location?
It could be. We saw a lot of guys miss spots more in the postseason.
Yeah.
That happens. And said, I feel perfectly comfortable with him as a closer. I don't think you trade him. I know people will still say that, because here's the other thing. As long as he is your closer, he is cost controlled. If you trade him and you don't have a new contract for Cade or someone like that, arbitration goes through the roof. Mm-hmm. So it's not just Clase's contract being cost controlled. It's actually keeping the rest of the bullpen cheap too. And he's amazing. So let's not race to trade the known for the unknown. Like I've talked about that last offseason. I don't want to trade known for unknown and you hope you get lucky, because there's always a degree of luck with prospects. Like, it's hard to say. Andrew Benintendi was a top prospect in baseball once. Like, there's a lot of guys like that who turn into, at best, average major leaguers.
And Emmanuel Clase is not average. You're not trading for average. Yeah, I think the way you do it is if you get an impact bat that plays every day.
That is proven.
That's the only, it's proven. That's the only way that it's more valuable than Clase. Or I wonder, so is a Cade Smith extension a precursor to a Clase trade?
No, I think it just makes logical sense to consider giving him an extension. I wouldn't read between the lines. I don't think they have any interest in moving Clase. I also think he's just one of those guys who is very well liked and has been, I don't know if I want to say a leader, but I don't think there's any intention of I think everything about trading him is purely other fan bases and Cleveland fans.
Wish casting. Sure. I mean, they're always going to listen. Let's be honest. They're always going to listen on everybody. So we know that. But I don't think it's anything serious unless you're seeing like a true everyday impact bat coming back their way in the outfield. Speaking of trades, we've got some ideas that we pitched around for an hour and a half before we started talking. Could the Guardians trade from the bullpen? Not Clase, but other guys in the bullpen. We'll talk about that next.
With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial flavors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement bonus on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privilege of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here. Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by robinhoodgold.llc.
I wish we would have recorded that off-air conversation we had about
Yeah.
trades, because it would have been this
We had
entire
some-
segment. But
I want to say one other thing. If we get to it, I was going through data. When we were discussing pitching prospects, I found one that we didn't talk about.
well, who is it?
But well, I'll save it. I'm going to sit on it.
Okay, so without trading Emmanuel Clase, can the Guardians afford to deal from the pen, and can they find someone to make it worth it? The one guy we landed on consistently when we were chatting was Wilyer Abreu from the Red Sox. And the thing is, your logic was perfect on this. They don't need to trade him, but there is some thought to them moving Wilyer Abreu because they've got Roman Anthony, who's the best prospect in baseball, coming. Christian Robinson, right? Christian Robinson.
Yeah, Christian Robinson.
He could play outfield. They've already got Cedane Rafael locked up. Now, he didn't have a great year offensively, but he's a great defender and he can move around. Jared Duran was an all-star, so he's not going anywhere. They're stuck with Masataka Yoshida at left and at DH because he can't play the field. He's a platoon bat. Wilyer Abreu won a Gold Glove in right field. So if the Red Sox, I just saw this pop up in MLB trade rumors. They want to raise the ceiling on their rotation. I think they want to raise the ceiling on their pitching staff altogether. They had one of the worst bullpens last year by FIP. It was 411, seventh worst in league. The one guy we landed on, you and I, was trading Hunter Gaddis. Does Hunter Gaddis, do we think Hunter Gaddis gets you enough back to make it worth trading him? And can they afford to? I think they can afford to. I think the question is, who can you get back that's going to make it worth it? And you and I felt like Wilyer Abreu was the perfect example because there's just not a lot of examples of long-term relievers, guys with a lot of control being traded. Like, we looked at Eric Swanson and Teoscar Hernandez. That would be a great deal, but Gaddis should have more value than Swanson because he's got more years control left on his first contract. And there's just not a lot of examples of this one, but yeah, we kept landing on Gaddis for Abreu.
Yeah, and something I want to throw out there before you jump down our throats, make sure you listen. Boston actually had the 10th most innings from their bullpen a year ago, so they do rely on and use that bullpen a lot. It is an important part for them. In terms of FIP, I had them at 24th overall. So, definitely in that bottom grouping. I thought it's going to cost more. And here's the thing. Wilyer Abreu is a perfect fit for Cleveland. Absolute perfect fit. Why is he a perfect fit? He's left-handed. Right now, this team is very right-handed. It's the humor of it. He has power. He does not chase. He chases a bit. But he walks a bit, but he also Ks a lot. But he hits the ball hard. He hits the ball with authority. He's probably the best defensive right fielder in baseball. That Gold Glove was well deserved. He's an absolute stud defensively. Might be a platoon bat. Couldn't hit lefties last year, but what he does kill is a sinker and a change. His numbers against those pitchers are great. This team struggled against sinkers and changes this year, so he also provides balance in that respect. Where you're getting a hitter where you can maybe insert him in the 5 spot. Maybe in the 4 spot. And it's like, it's going to help. There's a world where he hits 4 and Naylor 5 because Naylor and Ramirez both struggle with the change. So you can't have like the Tommy K-line situation where he goes out and only throws a changeup against the heart of your order and gets through it. I think it costs more than Gaddis. And, I brought up to you, it's like Eric Sabrowski, shout out to Everyday and Nunzio. He was a big fan of his. And when I was looking just at statistics in the minors last year, he was he was awesome in the minors and he was awesome in the big leagues. Apparently I closed the tab because I love to close tabs, but Boston has only Berendino, who's a major league lefty, but he is definitely like a second lefty in a bullpen. So it would be 2 relievers with 5 years of control. But I mean, Sabrowski might even be like their 7th inning guy based on what we saw. And Gaddis, he could be their closer. They Kenley Jansen was it last year. I guess they did sign Liam Hendricks, who's coming back from, it was an injury this time, and I wish him nothing but the best. But worst case scenario, he's Justin Slayton was pretty good for them last year at points, but then you got Slayton, Hendricks, and Gaddis, and that gives them a nice back end with Sabrowski. That kind of changes the whole look of that pen for them. And then, as you said, Wilyer opens the door for Roman Anthony, or they might try to use Wilyer as a bigger part or Tristan Casas as a bigger part to get an ace. Be curious to see what they do, but there's a certain logic to it.
Yeah, I think the thing we determined too with Wilyer was that being a platoon bat might preclude them from getting an ace, which is why maybe you
Yes.
settle for the reliever with a lot of club control. I think the bottom line is like we landed on Hunter Gaddis, and if we're saying no Clase, like you traded Tim Herron. I don't know. Lefties are hard to find, especially ones that can get righties and lefties out. Especially if you're not going to have Tommy. You're
I
not going
just
to
think
have
Gaddis is their third most valuable one. That's my kind of outside view.
yeah, and you're not going to have henches next year. So like you need Tim Herron who can get righties and lefties out. That's a big deal for them. I think they can afford to make this trade. I was kind of against it, but if you can trade a reliever and get someone who can play in your lineup, even if it's a left-handed platoon bat, as we said, a lot of pitchers are right-handed, so you're going to have more left-handed at bats, and they need a left-handed bat, and he's club controlled, and he's basically the right field version of Steven Kwan, except he makes a little more, he strikes out a little bit more, and there's a little more pop, but they're going to end up with like similar outputs WRC plus wise, so there's a good balance there, and he has more pop.
And we're hoping Stefan can help like move into some of that.
Yeah, you're going to get Trevor
role.
Stefan back next year.
And Andrew Walters is going to, we really haven't gotten into the secondary pieces. We should probably talk about them now.
Yeah. So yeah, the reason we said like the reason they might be able to sustain making this trade is a Gaddis trade or something is because you're going to, like you said, you're going to expand Andrew Walters' role. You're going to have Trevor Stefan back next year. You still have Nick Sandlin hanging around. We'll see what happens with that. You're going to add Franco Alomar to the 40-man roster, we're pretty sure. And there's some guys in the minors that are interesting. Like Walters and Cade Smith, all these guys have emerged. The prospects in the bullpen and the minors aren't as fruitful as they have been recently. There's still some guys, though. Like, there is Franco Alomar. Walters has graduated quite. So one of the arms we looked at, who was interesting, was Bradley Hanner, who's got a high spin sweeper and a high spin fastball, who's a little older, but he was good in the AFL last year. I'm interested in him. Alan Hernandez is in the AFL right now. He throws hard. He was only at high A last year, but he throws hard, and he's got a high spin. He's got a good cutter, so there's interest there. Magnus Ellerts kind of came along at times last year. I'm interested in Magnus Ellerts. Jay Driver was really good at high A, I will say. I don't think he's ready for the big time next year. But who knows? Like Nick Mikulajic was once a relief.
I got one more. Really you still haven't got my sleeper.
So I'll just say Nick Mikulajic was a one-time top prospect. What if he puts it back together next year? It's not out of the realm of possibility if he puts it back together. Jack Leftwich is a guy we thought at one time would be. He hasn't been. And I also like Tyler Thornton if he can stay healthy. He has no control. So we'll see. There's no Andrew Walters next year for sure, but there are guys in the minors who can still. Andrew Misiazek might put it back together. I don't know. Like for me, it's Alomar and like maybe Hanner, and then everybody else. We'll see what you point out. Everybody else is kind of a wild card, but
this isn't the big guy I was going to talk about. I still think Denholm could be interesting in that role as an Eli Morgan like, but I think Zane Morehouse stands out as the guy that we didn't discuss. And I know he is 24. And I know it's small sample size across levels, but he missed a lot of bats. He didn't walk a lot of guys. And he is that guy who bounced around a ton in college. So he is still like kind of a young, and I asked this to Paul Gillespie, right? That's his name. When they drafted him, I was like, isn't he kind of like a young arm in a way because he hasn't pitched a ton and he's bounced around and Paul like lit up. It's like, exactly. Yes. That's one of the things we like, that they saw developmental pathways. And Morehouse, I think, is, if I'm going to pick the helium breakout reliever for next year, that guy who is, Zane Morehouse is my pick right now, just because the numbers are there. He moved quickly at levels through the minors, and he hasn't thrown a ton of innings, but he did put together 50 last year, and they were really solid innings. So I think Zane Morehouse is kind of the sleeper.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys tuning in all week and into all the shows. If you missed anything, we've had quite a week. We did top 10 draft busts since 2000 on Tuesday. We did What If Wednesday. We talk a look at the biggest injuries in Cleveland baseball history and the impact of those and what could have been for their careers.
You left Seymour Butts off of this.
We left Seymour Butts off of this.
Our number 4 hitter.
What did we talk? I don't know what we talked about yesterday.
Ian Seymour.
Ian Seymour.
Yeah.
We talked about Austin Hedges' return and what that means for the Guardians' payroll and their roster. in their offseason. We talked about Stephen Vogt a little bit. Jeff threw out a Seymour Butts trade rumor, so definitely go check that out because we're mature here. But Monday, we'll come back. There is some newsy stuff that happened at the GM meetings this week. We got some quotes. We will kind of look at those on Monday. We'll pick up whatever happens from the weekend. So Monday will be kind of a newsy show. I do want to look at the free agent projections on Shane Bieber to talk about what that means for Cleveland if he can come back. Tuesday, we'll have Top 10 Tuesday. I've got some ideas for that. We'll have What If Wednesday again next week. We'll talk trades next Thursday. And then I think at some point next week, we will do another position review. Let us know what position you want us to review next.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review. Do all that fun stuff. It helps. Probably talk about the bullpen throughout this season, if I'm being honest, because it was
Share
so
with a
good.
friend.
And there's so much to still talk about. So thank you all. Tell us what you think of our trades, and go Guardians, go.